Necesse does something very few games manage to pull off. It combines Terraria-style progression and boss fights with exploration, survival and an entire colony management game. And I've been having a lot of fun with it. But the further I've played, the more I've felt that some of those systems aren't quite making the most of each other. The world is enormous, but there's surprisingly little reason to explore it. Progression works, but it could do much more with the systems that make Necesse unique. And if you're unfortunate enough to choose melee, some bosses seem determined to spend the entire fight anywhere except next to you. So today I want to take a look at 3 changes that I think could take Necesse from a good game to something much more special. Necesse obviously takes quite a lot of inspiration from Terraria when it comes to progression. You explore, improve your equipment, fight a boss, unlock the next stage of the game, find new materials, improve your equipment again, fight another boss, and so on. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. It's a progression system that works. But I think Necesse has the opportunity to take that formula much further because it already has something that makes it fundamentally different: the settlement. At the moment, beating a boss generally means that you, the player, can move on to the next stage. But I'd love to see boss progression start changing the entire world around you. Imagine defeating a major boss, and instead of simply unlocking the next equipment tier, suddenly new enemies begin appearing throughout the world. Your settlement receives new building options, new types of settlers can arrive. Existing settlers gain entirely new professions, build a harbour, build proper defensive structures and towers. And then the world starts changing as well. New events become possible, new structures begin to appear, new dungeons appear in existing locations, or doors that you couldn't access before that you now can. You could be given answers to clues or puzzles that you previously found you haven't been able to solve. You can even have the world react to what you've done. Defeat one boss and the pirates become more aggressive. Defeat another and something beneath the world starts waking up. And then the boss isn't simply just, beat this so I can craft the next sword. It's, if I beat this, what's going to happen to my world? And that's where I think Necesse could really separate itself from Terraria. We've all played Terraria, and I really would like to see the game take things to the next level. The settlement system is one of the most interesting ideas, so progression should increasingly connect exploration, combat, and the settlement management together. Every major victory should feel like you moved on to a new chapter of the game, rather than simply unlocking another row of crafting recipes. And then we have boss fights. If I'm playing melee, I'm in for a headache. The problem I've found with several bosses isn't necessarily that they're too difficult, it's that they can be incredibly frustrating to actually fight as a melee character. You'll dodge an attack, run towards the boss, and the boss flies to the other side of the screen. So you run over there, and then it flies somewhere else, and then somewhere else. And eventually, my mighty melee warrior has stopped looking like an unstoppable fighter and started looking like somebody desperately trying to play tag with a demon from the underworld. Meanwhile, a ranged character can continue firing, a summoner can have minions attacking, but with true melee, I can't physically reach the boss, then I can't deal damage. And I don't think the solution should simply be giving every melee weapon a projectile, because you're not really fixing melee, you're turning melee into ranged combat. I would rather see bosses designed with clearer phases that give every combat style an opportunity to shine. Now, some bosses do have this to an extent, but generally speaking I think the boss design is lacking in regards to how they themselves avoid attacks. So you could have a typical aggressive phase where the boss actively comes after you and you dodge all the projectiles, and then if you successfully avoid the attacks you get a punish window. Another idea is to have stagger mechanics. Deal enough damage to a certain area or successfully counter a particular attack and the boss becomes stunned. You could give the bosses completely different behaviours depending on your distance from them. If you're far away they can use range attacks or charges, but if you're standing right next to them they don't immediately run away. Instead they switch to close range movesets specifically designed around fighting melee characters. Heavy swings, ground slams, combos that need to be dodged, attacks you can potentially parry or punish. It means getting close to the boss becomes dangerous but also rewarding, and that's kind of how melee should be playing. I don't think the game needs easier bosses by any stretch, just design changes or even a mix of bosses, some that are easier to defeat for the different styles of play. Another problem I've had while exploring, and this is my big bugbear, particularly underground, is the sheer number of enemies that constantly spawn around you. Now I understand the idea, dark areas are supposed to be dangerous, and if you don't light them properly, enemies can spawn, and that's fine, but the problem is that sometimes it feels like they never stop spawning. You enter a cave, kill a group of enemies, start looking around, another group appears. Kill those, start mining, another one appears, kill those, so on, so on. Eventually, it stops feeling dangerous and starts feeling tedious, and I think that's an important distinction. Fighting enemies while exploring can make the world feel dangerous, but if I'm killing the same enemies every few seconds, they stop being an interesting encounter and become an interruption. Especially when what I actually want to do is explore, mine, look for structures, or work out what I'm going to do next. Now, I don't think the answer is to simply massively reduce the number of enemies either. I'd rather see some sort of local pressure system. So when you first enter an unexplored dark area, it should be full of enemies. Clear them out, and then immediately that area becomes temporarily safer, even without a torchlight in the area. And then maybe the danger builds back up if you leave it dark for long enough. Lighting would still matter, because properly lighting an area would permanently stop the enemies from spawning, but you wouldn't feel like you would have to carpet every single cave wall with torches just to get 30 seconds of peace. One of the things I really like and dislike about Necesse is the scale of the world. You can walk in any direction or jump in your boat and discover new biomes, and keep exploring for as long as you want. But the problem is, I don't really feel like I have much reason to. Once you've found the biome or resource you're currently looking for, a lot of the overworld starts to feel quite empty. Once you have uncovered a biome, found the resources, done the challenges and gone up against the boss, you just move on. You have such a huge infinite world when the amount of events that actually keep you engaged in an area are relatively small in comparison. And I think that's a shame, because an enormous procedurally generated world should make me constantly wonder, what's over there? I want to head off in a random direction because I don't know what I might find. Now, don't get me wrong, there is an element of unique items and finding special areas on the map. Sometimes you find special biomes like a dungeon or a pirate village, but I'm just left wanting more. You could have quest lines, events, stories going on with characters that lead you to different areas that allow you to discover a whole new history within the world. Something that pushes you out past the limitary boundary that you actually need to be in. There could be entire biomes with unusual modifiers. You could have extremely rare biomes that you might only encounter once in an entire playthrough. You could have things like treasure maps that lead you to areas of the map to find items. You could find part of the map from a dungeon or enemy and it points you somewhere thousands of tiles away, and suddenly you have a reason to attempt to travel there. I think some rewards should exist only through exploration, such as legendary weapons, unusual armor, cosmetic items, unique settlers. Things where another player can look and say, where did you find that? Because that's what the exploration needs, not just simply more resources scattered around the map. It needs surprises, and at the moment I don't think there's enough of that. Necesse already gives us this enormous world. I just want the game to give me some more reasons to actually get lost in it. Thank you for watching. Please consider subscribing, liking the video and leaving a comment.